New Orleans, French Quarter, corner of Royal and Governor Nichols Street. Behind its wrought iron balconies and pale stucco walls lies one of the most haunted addresses in America, a house where beauty once concealed unimaginable cruelty and where the screams of the tortured are said to echo through the night to this very day. In the early 19th century, New Orleans was a city of contradictions, elegant and cultured on the surface, yet built on the suffering of enslaved people whose labor fed its wealth. Into this world stepped Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a beautiful, charming socialite known for hosting some of the most extravagant parties the French Quarter had ever seen. She married 3 times, and with her third husband, Dr. Louis LaLaurie, she built a magnificent mansion in 1832 that quickly became the crown jewel of Royal Street. Candle-lit chandeliers, imported French furniture, gleaming marble floors. Everyone who attended her parties spoke of the Madame's impeccable taste and gracious hospitality. But behind the closed doors of the upper floors, a horror was unfolding that would haunt the city for centuries to come. Neighbors began to whisper. They noticed that the enslaved people working in the LaLaurie household appeared gaunt, terrified, moving through the house like ghosts, even while still alive. Rumors spread of a cook chained to the stove, of screams heard late at night that were quickly hushed. Delphine LaLaurie, for all her social grace, ruled her household with a cruelty that shocked even the standards of her time, and in a slave-holding society that was saying something. The truth came to light on April 10, 1834. A fire broke out in the kitchen of the mansion. As neighbors and firefighters rushed to help, they discovered the elderly cook chained to the stove by a thick iron chain around her ankle. She later confessed that she had started the fire herself, deliberately, telling rescuers she would rather die in the flames than continue suffering the horrors that awaited her upstairs. Horrors, she said, were being inflicted upon her fellow enslaved people in a locked room few had ever seen. Firefighters and concerned citizens forced their way up to the attic, expecting to find nothing more than smoke damage. What they found instead would become one of the most horrifying discoveries in American history. Chained to the walls were men and women in various states of mutilation. Witnesses described bodies stretched and reshaped through torture, subjects of what seemed to be cruder, monstrous experiments. Some had their limbs broken and reset at impossible angles. Others had their mouths forced open and packed with organs removed from different victims, giving them the appearance of grotesque human dolls. One woman was found with her skin flayed in a spiral pattern from her neck to her waist. Some captives had been kept alive for months, perhaps years, in these conditions, existing in a state of perpetual agony. Several had died in being left where they fell, their bodies decomposing alongside the still living. The scene was so horrific that newspapers of the time struggled to describe it in full detail, and many accounts were considered too gruesome to publish in their entirety. What was published sent shockwaves through New Orleans and the nation. A furious mob gathered outside the mansion, and word spread that Delphine LaLaurie and her husband had somehow slipped away in a carriage before the authorities could arrest them, vanishing into the night, some say to Paris, others say they never truly left New Orleans at all. The mob, denied justice, turned its rage on the house itself, tearing through the mansion, destroying furniture, ripping apart walls and looting whatever remained. The LaLaurie mansion stood gutted and empty for years afterward, its grand facade now a monument to horror rather than high society. No one wanted to live there, no one wanted to even walk past it after dark. Over the following decades, the mansion changed hands many times, and each new owner reported the same disturbing phenomena. A girls' school operated there briefly before shutting down amid rumors of strange, unexplained events terrifying both students and staff. It became a music conservatory, and again, reports emerged of instruments playing on their own in empty rooms. It was converted into cheap apartments for the poor and newly arrived immigrants of New Orleans, and tenants told chilling stories of chains rattling in the walls at night, of disembodied screams tearing through the silence, of shadowy, mutilated figures glimpsed in hallways and then gone in an instant. One of the most infamous reports came from a tenant who woke in the night to find a dark, twisted figure standing over his bed, its limbs bent at wrong, impossible angles, before it dissolved into the darkness. Another resident claimed she was attacked by an invisible force that left chain-like marks across her body. A man reported waking up to find his infant near death, later claiming an unseen presence had tried to strangle the child in its crib. Time and again, families fled in the middle of the night, refusing to spend even one more hour inside those walls. Paranormal investigators who have entered the mansion over the years describe overwhelming feelings of dread the moment they cross the threshold, a heaviness in the air, as though the walls themselves remember what happened there. Cold spots appear without explanation in the middle of humid New Orleans summers. Electronic equipment malfunctions inexplicably. Recording devices have captured what investigators describe as faint moaning and the distinct sound of chains dragging across wooden floors, even when no such chains exist in the building today. Visitors on ghost tours and the LaLaurie mansion remains one of the most visited stops on New Orleans' famous haunted tours. Frequently report sudden nausea, a crushing sense of being watched, or an overwhelming urge to flee the property, despite feeling no ability to explain why. The attic, the site of the worst discoveries, is often described as the epicenter of the haunting. Those who have been permitted inside speak of an oppressive silence that swallows sound, broken only by faint, indistinct whispering that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some claim to have seen the outlines of chained figures still standing against the walls, exactly where the tortured victims were found in 1834, frozen in the same positions as though time itself refuses to release them from that place. Actor Nicolas Cage once owned the mansion, purchasing it in 2007. He lived there only briefly before the property was lost to foreclosure, and he later spoke about strange occurrences during his short residence. Doors that opened on their own, cold drafts moving through sealed rooms, a persistent sense of not being alone. He sold the house not long after, and it has changed hands quietly since, now used as a private residence. Its true ownership carefully guarded from public tours out of respect for privacy, though the legend that surrounds it continues to grow with every passing year. What makes the LaLaurie mansion so uniquely terrifying is not simply the presence of ghosts, but the sheer weight of documented historical human suffering embedded in its walls. This is not a legend built on rumor alone. Court records, newspaper accounts, and first-hand witness testimony from 1834 confirm that real atrocities occurred within that attic. The horror is not imagined. It is remembered, preserved in brick and plaster, in a house that continues to stand more than a century and a half later as a silent witness to the worst of what humanity is capable of. To this day, locals in the French Quarter say that late at night, when the streets grow quiet and the tourists have gone, you can still hear it if you stand close enough to the mansion's walls, the faint clink of a chain shifting in the dark. And beneath it, almost too quiet to be sure you heard it at all, a woman's voice, weeping, asking over and over to simply be set free.